The Belizean National Prayer. Almighty and eternal God, who through Jesus Christ has revealed your glory to all nations, please protect and preserve Belize, our beloved country. God of might, wisdom, and justice, please assist our Belizean government and people with your Holy Spirit of counsel and fortitude. Let the light of your divine wisdom direct their plans and endeavors, so that with your help we may attain our just objectives. With your guidance, may all of our endeavors tend to peace, social justice, liberty, national happiness, the increase of industry, sobriety, and useful knowledge. We pray, O God of mercy, for all of us, that we may be blessed in the knowledge and sanctified in the observance of your most holy law, that we may be preserved in union and in that peace which the world itself cannot give. And after enjoying the blessings of this life, please admit us, dear Lord, to that eternal reward that you have prepared for those who love you. Amen.
Oath of allegiance of a new senator.
Mr. Clerk, kindly administer the oath of allegiance to the new senators.
I, Darrell Bradley, do swear that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Belize, and will uphold the Constitution and the law, and that I will conscientiously, impartially, and to the best of my ability discharge my duties as a senator, and do right to all manner of people without fear or favor, affection, or ill will. So help me God.
I, Shari Medina, do swear that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Belize, and will uphold the Constitution and the law, and that I will conscientiously, impartially, and to the best of my ability discharge my duties as a senator, and do right to all manner of people without fear or favor, affection, or ill will. So help me God.
I, Ashton Mackenzie, do swear that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Belize, and will uphold the Constitution and the law, and I will conscientiously, impartially, and to the best of my ability discharge my duties as a senator, and do right to all manner of people without fear, favor, affection, or ill will. So help me God.
Congratulations to you, Senators Darrell Bradley, Shari Medina, and Ashton Mackenzie. Welcome to today's sitting of the Senate, and of course to the Parliament of Belize.
Announcement by the President.
Firstly, honorable members, at the meeting of the Senate held on 9th March 2021, the membership of the Standing Orders Committee, the House Committee, the Committee of Privileges, and the Regulations Committee were constituted as per Standing Order 64. However, there is a vacancy in the membership of the Committee of Privileges, and so I hereby inform that Senator Darrell Bradley will fill the vacancy. Secondly, honorable members, by letter dated 2nd July 2021, Cabinet's recommendation has been signified to the following: Governor General Conditions of Service Amendment Bill 2021 and Resolution to amend the schedule to the Governor General Conditions of Service Act, Chapter 7 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, Motion 2021. I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, may I, on behalf of this side of the House, congratulate the honorable senators who have just taken their oaths of office. I welcome them for this meeting of the Senate, and I'm not sure when we meet next what the array will be like on the other side, but welcome nonetheless. Madam President, I rise to lay on the table sessional paper number 10/1/14, contract agreements for the Philip Gorson Highway and Ramata Bypass upgrading project, lots 1, 2, 3, and 4, and Caracol Road upgrading project, lot 1C.
Honorable members, that paper is ordered to lie on the table.
Statement by Minister.
Madam President, members of the Senate, at approximately 1 a.m. Haiti time, 11 a.m. Belize time this morning, yesterday I should say, the President of Haiti, Jovenel Moïse, was assassinated when his home was invaded by a band of killers. Depending on who you believe, it is either state-sponsored or a callous and reckless attack upon the President and his family. We understand that his wife has also succumbed to her injuries in that dreadful attack. On behalf of the government and people of Belize, we express our sincerest condolences to the family of President Moïse and to the people of the Republic of Haiti. Madam President, it is important for us to record on the records of this Senate the grave concern of the government of Belize, and indeed, I believe, the people of the Caribbean. The situation in Haiti has been under the monitoring and surveillance of the Caribbean community for quite some time. Indeed, the CARICOM heads of government just completed their meeting yesterday, and one of the issues that they grappled with was the position and the conditions in Haiti. Heads of government received a report from an expert group that had been appointed by heads to take a look at what was happening in Haiti and to advise heads of government and to make recommendations on what could take place. Madam President, Senators, the situation in Haiti is particularly grim. Prior to his death, there was a serious constitutional question as to the continuing legitimacy of President Moïse and his authority to continue to govern Haiti. Indeed, he has for many months been governing by presidential decree, having dissolved necessary organs of state. There is a question whether or not his actions were indeed lawful. Nevertheless, he was unable to attend the CARICOM heads of government meeting because, in his words, he was in negotiations with all concerned parties and the opposition, seeking to have a government that would be acceptable to the Haitian people. The reports of the expert group, Madam President, is to the effect that there is widespread violence, wanton killing, gangs are running wild in Haiti, and in fact there is a virtual complete breakdown of law and order in that republic, a member of the CARICOM family. We believe in Belize and indeed in CARICOM, Madam President, that Haiti requires urgent attention. there is an urgent need for the restoration of law and order. There is an urgent need for elections to be held in Haiti. On Monday, I believe it was, the elections law was promulgated, scheduling congressional elections and presidential elections for September and November of this year. Madam President, Senators, before those elections can be held, and they must be held, there is a need for there to be calm. There is a need for there to be conditions that prevail, that permit campaigning, that permits electioneering, that permits registration, that permits civil discourse and debate, and indeed, and most importantly, the creation of a register of valid voters and ultimately the exercise of democratic will by the people. We have been for some time very concerned as to whether that can happen, and messages have been sent repeatedly, engagements have been had repeatedly with President Moise to this effect. It remains our wish, it remains our aspiration that the people of Haiti will have an opportunity to enjoy life peacefully, to live with one another in safe circumstances. Indeed, Madam President, it is absolutely critical that we have some law and order prevailing in Haiti. Haiti is a member of the Caribbean community. It is a member of the Organization of American States. And in both cases, it is party to democratic charters. In the case of the Caribbean community, there's the CARICOM Charter of Civil Society. And we, as members of CARICOM, must hold the government of Haiti to account to ensure that the principles that found all member states of CARICOM are respected in Haiti because they redound to the benefit of the people of Haiti. Madam President, the government of Belize joined the heads of government in calling for, among other things, the importance of enabling conditions that can ensure that the elections are transparent, inclusive, and secure. We call for transparency and impartiality and popular confidence in the conduct of the electoral process, eliminating voter disenfranchisement and avoiding a controversial referendum that President Moise had scheduled to hold at the same time that would have caused dramatic changes to the Constitution of Haiti. Finally, Madam President, I believe we all pray for Haiti and its people. The violence, the lack of law and order has gone on for far too long. And that country, though apparently by metrics of the World Bank and the IMF is poor, its people are rich. They deserve a peaceful life. They deserve the opportunity to work, to pursue their business. And we stand ready, along with CARICOM, to do whatever is necessary to advance that process. We just received a message that the chairman of CARICOM has called an emergency meeting for midday today, Belize time. Hopefully we'll finish by then, as Prime Minister is leaving and I need to attend. In any event, Madam President, with your leave and hopefully the support of the Senate, I would ask that we stand and mark a moment of silence for the death of the President, his wife, and others in Haiti who have passed as a result of the violence. Thank you, Madam President.
Government business.
Motion relating to the business or sitting of the Senate.
I recognize the leader of government business.
Madam President, I move that at its rising today, the Senate adjourn to a date to be fixed by the President.
Honorable members, the question is that at its rising today, the Senate adjourn to a date to be fixed by the President. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Public business, government business, motion.
I recognize the leader of government business.
Madam President, I move that whereas Section 3.2 of the Governor General Conditions of Service Act provides that the House of Representatives may by resolution amend the schedule increasing the salary and duty allowance of the Governor General, and whereas the salary of the Governor General currently stands at the rate of $52,848 per annum and the duty allowance stands at the rate of $2,400 per annum, and whereas the salary and duty allowance of the Governor General has not been increased since the entry into force of the Act on the 5th of July 1989, now therefore be it resolved that this Honorable House amends the schedule to increase the salary of the Governor General to $75,000 per annum and the duty allowance to $12,000 per annum. Madam President, with your leave, before debating this motion, I would like to move the related bill, which is the Governor General Conditions of Service Amendment Bill 2021, and I will rise to move the second reading of a bill for an act to amend the Governor General Conditions of Service Act, Chapter 7 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, and to provide for health insurance covered for the Governor General, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. In a very brief introduction to the resolution and to the amendment, Madam President, let me say to this Honorable Senate that I think it is most important that we start by recognizing the sterling service of His Excellency Sir Colville Young as Governor General of Belize. Sir Colville served Belize for approximately 27 years with distinction and loyalty and patriotism. Indeed, he was a shining example of what is good and great about Belize and Belizeans. Sir Colville served without once, because I have spoken to him on this, without once making any request for an adjustment to his salary or to the allowance. And that is a mark of the type of man that he is, that he regarded his appointment as one of service and not one for enrichment. That having been said, Madam President, the point of the matter is that there is a reality of the cost of living. The cost of living in 1989, when this law was passed, has risen dramatically to where we are in 2021. And therefore, the purpose of this motion and the bill is to take account of what we experience in Belize in terms of the cost of living increase. Additionally, Madam President and members of the Senate, in order to complete this exercise, the government undertook a survey of what was happening in the Caribbean in terms of their governors general and in terms of the salaries of the heads of government, the head of judiciary of Belize. It is based on that study that we concluded that the appropriate benefits for the head of state, the head of executive of Belize, was as appears in the motion and in the bill. We believe that whoever assumes that office and serves Belize in that capacity should take office with comfort that they need not worry, they need not be concerned for their health whilst they serve and thereafter, that they will be taken care of by the state of Belize. We believe that the person, whoever he or she may be, ought to be compensated in terms and in lines similar to that we find in other heads of organs of state of Belize, as well as the Caribbean. And finally, Madam President, we believe that the family of any member or any person who serves as Governor General should be taken care of in terms of health insurance. It is a difficult task. It is a full-time job. It requires a person to make decisions in his or her own right on the advice of government. It requires the person to conduct himself and herself with absolute probity. It requires the person to act and represent Belize and Belizeans at home and abroad, it requires them to have diplomatic skills, and above all, they are representing Queen Elizabeth II. So we should not forget that. Speaking to Sir Colville, I can say that the task is onerous. We might think of it as ceremonial, but one has to deliberate on many things. Every day, there are questions and things in the Constitution that the Governor General has to do, and he or she has to satisfy himself or herself that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. So I believe, and I hope, that the senators will support the increases in order that the current Governor General can serve with distinction, as has the previous two Governors General, and serve securing the knowledge that she and her family, while she serves, will be reasonably compensated. Finally, the bill introduces a term limit for the Governor General. And the reason for that is because when one looks around the Commonwealth, you will see an ever-increasing tendency towards term limits for prime ministers and presidents, and also for governors general. And so we believe that a term of 7 years, a single non-renewable term for 7 years, is a good period for someone to serve Belize and to serve Belizeans, and then we look for another Belizean who will enjoy the confidence of our people. With that, Madam President, I ask that the motion and the bill be supported by colleague senators. Thank you.
I recognize Senator Darrell Barte.
Madam President, first let me say how honored that I am to have been given this opportunity to serve in this honorable house. It is indeed a humbling experience. I was here once before in the chair that you sit, and one of the things that I do remember about the Senate as a child is how big this building used to seem to me when I would drive by or watch it on television. And when you're actually in the Senate, you realize how small it is. But the smallness of the space does not undermine the gravity of what we're here to do in terms of debating the people's business. And rest assured, Madam President, that I internalize that challenge, and I would try my utmost best to do justice and honor and integrity, and to speak with decorum, and to show my fellow senators and yourself, Madam President, the highest degree of respect. Secondly, Madam President, I wish to open off the comments in joining the Honorable Foreign Minister and endorsing the statement in terms of condolences for the family of the President of Haiti. And on behalf of the opposition, we join in support of the government in relation to any efforts that they will do in terms of promoting a system of democratic governance within the country of Haiti. They are our Caribbean brothers and sisters, and while our heart goes out to the president and his family, we equally support the notion of restoring the highest values of democratic ideals to the Haitian people so that they may enjoy the fruits of a democracy. The third thing, Madam President, I first of all wanted to make comments in relation to the motion before the Senate. And I first want to congratulate the government in regards to the appointment of Governor General. Sometimes it thinks that the opposition is only to oppose. But one of the things that I want to present as a senator in this honorable house is that where we see that there is good movement in relation to the government, we will support it. And our hand of friendship and our ideas will be there, because at the end of the day, we are joined as Belizeans, and it endures for the benefit of our people. So that I do support the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs in recognizing the significant contributions of our former Governor General and his stellar service, 27 years, in relation to serving the people of Belize in the highest office of our land, or head of state. I likewise would want to congratulate the government in relation to the appointment of the current Governor General. I think that it signals a major move forward. In this country, we have struggled with the issue of Aboriginal rights and the rights of our indigenous people. And I do believe that the appointment of the current Governor General signals two important messages. The first and foremost is that the appointment in terms of the person is well deserving, and we congratulate the Governor General for that. And secondly, it signals a recognition of the importance of our indigenous people, that throughout the world, what has happened historically to indigenous peoples in all countries should be rectified. And I think that it is a proud moment for Belize to be a leader in the global community, that we could say, I believe it is the first time that our head of state is a member of an indigenous population. And I congratulate the government for that. The last thing, and I do say this with a degree of reservation, because I do hear the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs in relation to the office. And I do think that it is a very valid point that we would recognize the importance to Belize of the office of Governor General, that that person is our head of state. And I do agree and appreciate that that person should be comfortable in the office. I have no difficulty with that. The difficulty that I do have in relation to the motion is the timing. And I think that recently the significant portion of our population has been called upon to bear sacrifices. We have had in this honorable house a passage of law that has reduced the salaries for public officers and teachers by 10%. We've had a situation where a significant amount of the private sector are struggling. We have had a situation where in municipal governments, people are being laid off. They're losing their job because of the reality of COVID. And while we do not have any particular difficulty with the statements made by the Honorable Foreign Minister, we do have difficulty in relation to the effect of this motion at this time. That we feel as an opposition that notwithstanding all the benefits and notwithstanding the idea that that remuneration has not moved since the formation of this country, that at this present moment when all of our people have been called upon to make sacrifices, we also believe that that sacrifice should be shared by the highest office in the land. That that sacrifice should not only be called upon for the person who works to clean the drain or the person who works at the mid-level, but it should be all of us. And so our position in relation to an increase, which is of itself a sizable increase, because when you account for the allowances and you consider all of those, that's a $53,000 to an $87,000 increase. That's 60%. In this climate, when the significant majority of our population has been called to make a sacrifice, we just believe that the timing of this is not appropriate. Sacrifice should be something that is borne by all, including the head of state. The last comment that I want to make in relation to this is on the motion of, or on the bill itself. The Honorable Foreign Minister had made comments in relation to studies done to compare the rates of salaries for Governor General and heads of state and heads of government throughout the region, and comparing it to the office of Chief Justice and, of course, the office of Prime Minister. One of the things that I would ask as a question is if the study included just considering the time limit, if there's any kind of rationale or reason behind the 7 years. I know the Honorable Foreign Minister mentioned that there was a 7 years, but is there any reason for the 7 years? One of the things that I would commit out there for consideration is the bill itself deals with, or there is a pension that attracts the office of Governor General, and when you reduce the time for service of Governor General, the convention in this country has been that our Governor General serve an extended period of time. You're speaking about 27 years, and in relation to Her Excellency Dame Anita Gordon, I believe it was exceeding 20 years. So the reality of that is that the financial impact of a pension would be very small because you're only dealing with one or possibly two persons that would have retired from this office. I know in other countries, as the Honorable Foreign Minister mentioned, the studies, there are other countries that have taken a serious look at the budgetary implications of their head of state and the Governor General. And I know in a country like Canada, their tradition is that the head of state, the Governor General, only serves a 5-year period. And one of the concerns and criticisms of the Canadian people is that that takes a bite out of the budget for the federal government and for provinces, because you will have a lot of people on pensions and collecting a benefit. So my question lastly there would be to the Foreign Minister in respect to whether or not there has been any kind of examination in relation to, because you're reducing the salary, there will be a significantly more amongst of persons who would be eligible to collect a pension, and if there was any look at the financial impact in relation to that. Those would be my comments.
I recognize Senator Osmani Salas.
Thank you, Madam President. With your leave, Madam President, I would like to say a few words before I share my comments on the motion and the bill at hand. I would like to associate myself on behalf of the Belize Network of NGOs and endorse the words of condolences and concern that were expressed by our Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs on behalf of the government and people of Belize in relation to these sort of horrible, turns of event in Haiti, the assassination of the president of Haiti and his wife. And I would also like to associate, myself with the call for action that Minister Courtney expressed. And like my colleague before me, we stand ready to support in any which way possible so that our sister nation can move steadily towards a semblance of normalcy. They deserve it, they need it. It's been far too long that they have been suffering. I would also like to welcome our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, representing the opposition. Welcome back, Senator Bradley. Welcome to Senator Medina and Senator McKenzie. I look forward to the engagement and working closely along with you for the duration of your tenure, our tenure. In terms of the motion relating to the Governor General Conditions of Service Act and the proposed amendment, I had to do some research of my own. I know that in some quarters it is a hard pill to swallow in relation to the upward adjustment of the Governor General's remuneration. I had already expressed, before today, we had the opportunity here in the upper chamber to congratulate the government for the appointment of Her Excellency Furla Salam as our Governor General. I read just yesterday that Canada appointed their first ever indigenous Governor General. They called it a first for them. And I felt so proud knowing that we were the first within the Commonwealth of Nations to appoint an indigenous leader and representative as our Governor General. So, like the rest of us, I'm sure, we should be very proud and justifiably so about that. Now, as I mentioned, it may be a hard pill to swallow among some quarters, given our fiscal situation, given the recent developments the fact that we passed that 10% payment cut. But it is because of that that I felt compelled to see what is happening in the rest of the Commonwealth. And I want to share a few figures that I came across. In terms of salary and in terms of service, or I should say duration of service. I will not even mention what Australia pays its Governor General because we'll all fall from our seats, right? So I won't even mention it. But if we look within the Caribbean region, for example, Barbados, which in that instance, by November of this year, they will do away with the Governor General. But in what the salary has been up to now is $220,000 Belize annually. In terms of the length of service, it has varied for them. There is no set period. The incumbent has served for 3 years, but before that, Governor Generals in Barbados had served for 5 years, 6 years, 15 years. We look at Jamaica. It's getting a little closer to our situation. They have been paying their Governor General $140,000 Belize more than their Prime Minister. In terms of term length, the Governor General serves at Her Majesty's pleasure. The incumbent has served for 12 years. Previous Governor Generals have served for 11, 15, 18 years. We look at St. Kitts and Nevis. Their Governor General is paid $102,000 a year. Again, the Governor General serves at the pleasure of Her Majesty. The incumbent has been there for 6 years, and previous GGs have served for 2, 6, 12, 17 years. The Bahamas now, they have been paying their Governor General for $74,000 a year, Belize dollars. All these figures I've been sharing are in Belize dollars. Now, this is the one example I came across where their Governor General usually serves a term of 5 years. So now I share all of that to try to drive home the point why we agree with the government proposal and with some of what Prime Minister Briceño had said in relation to our Governor General. It has been long overdue. It has been long overdue. And yes, I joined my colleagues before me in congratulating this and feeling very grateful for the stellar service from our previous Governor General, Sir Colville Young. He deserved better than he got. He did deserve better than he got. So even though it may be a hard pill to swallow among some quarters, it is the right thing to do in relation to salary. It is the right thing to do. And in terms of the length of service, I as well would want to know what the justification for that 7 years. What is the justification? Why not 5? Why not 10? Why 7? So I would like to hear some of that. But this gives me the opportunity to say that I believe that 40 years since independence, we are ready. Belize is ready to take a close look at our Constitution, to be engaged in a comprehensive review of our Constitution as part of a constitutional reform process. It's been 40 years since our independence, 20 years since that Political Reform Commission report was tabled. So I think we should engage in that. We should join hands and engage in that. And among everything that we look at, we'll look at the role of the Governor General. We decide as a people if that's something we want to continue or if we want to follow in the footsteps of our sister nation, Barbados. It is time for us to do that. And I am hoping that in that 7 years, we ensure that we do that. If I could look at the bill now, Madam President, and I'm about ready to wrap up my comments here, in terms of the health insurance. The second question I have is, because I did not see it sort of specifically stated here, the proposed section 14A reads, the Governor General, the spouse of the Governor General, and every entitled child of the Governor General shall be provided with health insurance coverage at the expense of the government. So what this does not say, and what I would like to know, is if this will be only for the term of office of the Governor General. And if it is beyond that, I would also like to know, and if it is beyond that, what does that mean for health insurance coverage for the children of the Governor General once they turn 18? So these are questions I have, because the way it's stated, it seems to be open-ended, and in our opinion, it should not be. It should be during the duration of service for the family. For the Governor General, that is another matter. We already heard comments about the pension, and so I won't repeat that. But those are my comments on those, and I thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Bishop Moses Vengeshe.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I join with the Foreign Minister in expressing sympathy to the country of Haiti at the death of, or the assassination actually, of the President of Haiti and his wife, President Moise. I recognize that, especially for churches, we do join with the country, we join with churches at this time. Most of our denominations do associate and have affiliation with the different churches in Haiti, and so it is important to be able to recognize and sympathize with them at this time. I also take the opportunity to, as others have done, to congratulate our senators who are sitting on the other side for this sitting. Congratulate you. I recognize service to country is what is important for all of us. Madam President, I rise to speak on the motion and the bill before us, and to preface my statement by indicating that I hold the office of the Governor General with utmost respect. And this is the chief individual who, as mentioned before, represents the Queen in our country. Every opportunity, both individually to the person who holds the office and everything which goes with the office, the function and everything else must be, we must ensure as a country that that person is comfortable. I am certain that it was that which was afforded to the previous holder of the office and will continue to be so. But Madam President, this government over the last month of June asked teachers and public servants to make a sacrifice. I stood here in this Senate and used the term shared sacrifice at the time. as they were asked to take a 10% reduction. This 10%, for which teachers and public servants took to the streets and demanded that there be some alternative arrangements, or to look at alternative arrangements. The cry at that time was, and still is, that we must make sacrifices. That was the rallying cry then, and I think that is the rallying cry today. We must all make sacrifices. It was said and argued by the government that it was cutting back on some things, that the government would cut back on new vehicles, the purchase of new vehicles, and that some government ministers would also make sure that they take some reductions insofar as benefits are concerned. In the middle of all this, Madam President, we have this motion and this bill before us to increase the salary of the Governor General. As was mentioned before, it is an honorable thing to do, but the timing could not have been worse. When, in the middle of the cry for shared sacrifices, this is what is before us. Somehow, I suppose the question might be asked, if not now, when? Well, I dare say that it is the same thing that can be said to the teachers and public servants. If not now, when? It was said that further negotiations will take place with the teachers and public servants at a time when things get better, whatever that means. I would suggest that perhaps we need to look at this again. Madam President, on the basis of shared sacrifice and elevating the issue of the ethics of principle as we know it right across, that which was done then and that which must take place now. I believe that we have to look at what we're doing at this time insofar as asking for an increase for one individual as against others. Concerning the time limit, Madam President, again, like the other speakers before me, I think a justification is needed as to why 7 years. Thank you very much.
I recognize Senator Shari Medina.
Pleasant good morning, Madam President, colleagues, senators. It's a pleasure for me to be here in this honorable house. It's been quite a while that I've been thinking, when will I ever get the opportunity? Well, today is the day, right? And I'm very privileged to be here amongst you all. I must sympathize with the Foreign Minister and the people of Haiti for the most, I would say, dramatic. It was, when I heard the news myself, it really brought chills thinking about families and friends that the president have left behind. But nevertheless, we continue to pray for the people of Haiti and that God continue to bless them endlessly. Madam President, I rise today to make my contribution, presentation on the amendment to the Governor General's Service and Conditions Bill 2021. First of all, I must congratulate the government of Belize for the appointment of the newly elected Governor General, and also with the fact that such appointment was a woman. This brings great joy to my heart. With all this in mind, though, it would be fair for our head of state, the Governor General of Belize, be compensated in accordance with the functions and responsibilities thereof. Sorry, let me remove my mask. I think I get too used to wearing my mask every day, so it sticks on my mouth. So, yes, as I was saying, I believe the Governor General must be compensated in accordance with the functions and responsibilities thereof if our current economic situation was different. COVID-19 has drastically impacted our country's economic standing. Knowing that we are not financially stable at this time, we have been asked, and I will echo the sentiments of my colleagues from earlier today, to sacrifice, sacrifice, and sacrifice. Something that has recently caused our teachers and public officers to take a pay cut, 10% pay cut. Something that now provides a different household income for many, with only one source of income for some, nothing at all. Bearing in mind the many other Belizeans today who are jobless, in need of food assistance, and of course, other basic necessities. I say this to say that we are in an economic crisis that perhaps after the economy stabilizes, that the raise be considered, the remuneration be considered. We must also remember that our GG continues to have a rented home, assigned vehicle, security, driver, and other perks, knowing that, yes, of course, it's a ceremonial position, but we must remember the limited resources already being spent for all of these. With all due respect, we need to reflect on our many Belizeans who have taken an immense blow during COVID-19 and still happening today. Being without jobs, and I repeat this because this is something I hear from my fellow community members many times and every day, whose bills won't disappear overnight, who cannot put food on the table due to economic demise. Let this conversation continue when our economy becomes fully stable. For now, our many Belizeans are all taking a severe economic blow. And such, Madam President, it has marked and scarred our people mentally and emotionally. As we wake up every day, many of our Belizeans wake up every day thanking God for life, but wondering how they'll get through the day. I echo again, we were asked to sacrifice, sacrifice, and sacrifice. So, until when this conversation can continue again, when we have a more stable economy, we can sing this tune again to consider our remuneration. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Kevin Herrera.
Madam President, with your permission, I'd like to make some brief statements. On behalf of the, let me take off my mask, sorry. On behalf of the business community, I'd like to join the leader of government business in in sending condolences to the people of Haiti. Madam President, Haiti has been probably one of the countries that has been most unjustly treated in its history. Goes back to, and we normally listen on the news and we hear they mention that Haiti is the poorest country in the hemisphere. But what is normally missing is, some of the atrocities that have been perpetrated against that country, starting with its founder. One, it was the only successful slave revolution in our history, starting with Toussaint Louverture, and the injustices that were committed against him. They eventually killed him. Well, he died in a jail, but he was locked up for no really good reasons. And that has continued almost on to this day. And so I join very strongly with the leader of our government business in let us try to do all that we can in our power to join the CARICOM nations and other nations in trying to assist Haiti and in them trying to restore their democratic institutions, bring law and order back to the country, and that their citizens would enjoy the type of privileges that come along with, or the rights that come along with law and order, that they'll be able to live peaceably in their country. Madam President, I'd also like to congratulate the senators from the opposition. I look forward to working with you all. Madam President, my comments will be very, very brief on the Governor General Conditions of Service Amendment Bill and the accompanying motion. I don't think there's anyone who will quarrel that the increase in salary for the Governor General is not much deserving. I think that it should have happened a long time ago. I think it's disgraceful what has been paid to the Governor General over the years. Again, I think that the health insurance that is being provided for the Governor General again is very well deserving. I think the Governor General serves an important function. Where I have a little concern, and again, not so much that there's a term limit to it, but is really the cost implications. And I think my colleagues mentioned a little earlier, about the sensitivities that exist right now with respect to, the sacrifices, the cuts that have taken place with respect to the public service and the government workers. And I think the cost implications because of the 7-year limit and perhaps the number of Governor Generals we'll have getting pensions over the years, I think will certainly take up the costs for the government. Again, would not probably have been a big issue, but we are at a time where we're looking at cutting costs, not growing it. And so that's certainly the concern that I would want to table this morning, is that perhaps it's not the best timing with respect to the limitation on service. And I see that there can be significant cost implications, especially given if these appointments are to relatively young people. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Ashton McKenzie.
Thank you very much, Madam President. A most warm and pleasant good morning, Madam President, esteemed colleagues on both sides of the House, and of course, Belizeans in tune at home and abroad. I take this opportunity to also bid a very pleasant good morning to residents of my hometown, Peine Punta Gorda, who are also in tune. Like my colleagues that presented prior to me, I would like to also, on behalf of the opposition, convey my deepest sympathies to the government and people of the Republic of Haiti on the most tragic assassination of their president. Hearing the news this morning, shockwaves and of course goosebumps certainly went across my body. Madam President, I also take this opportunity to say a special thank you to the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Moses Shine Barrow, for affording me the opportunity, along with my other colleagues, to make our contributions in this Honorable House this morning. And I also take this opportunity to say how honored I am to stand among parliamentarians this morning, especially my colleague, the Honorable Senator Darrell Bradley, who of course has always been a long mentor of mine, and of course somebody that I hold in high esteem because of his principles and of course his passion for service to people and country. Madam President and esteemed colleagues, as it relates to the amendment of the Governor General Service and Conditions Bill 2021, there are several things that I would like to share. First and foremost, I do offer my congratulations as well to Her Excellency Froila Salam on being appointed as Belize's first indigenous Governor General. And of course, I certainly applaud the government on their effort to be more inclusive to women in leadership in our country, as it is most important. There are a few things that I appreciate about the bill in terms of you're looking at health insurance, in terms of the time frame allotted for the Governor General to serve. I believe that it is indeed a good idea to ensure that those who serve our country are in good hands after they demit office. It is very important, though, that we call to mind the message that has been consistently uttered by this government since they took office, which is sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. Madam President, esteemed colleagues, while I can agree on the idea of an increase and a proper pension for our past, present, and future Governor Generals, the thought of a salary adjustment for this position in the current economic climate is one that I believe not ought to be entertained at this particular juncture. Increasing the salary for such position when currently teachers, public officers, especially our frontliners, must endure a 10% pay cut while at the same time cope with inflation in the cost of goods and services across this country is just too much to bear. The Governor General currently enjoys a substantial amount of perks, which includes 24/7 security, a government vehicle, free housing with all amenities, and it is also important to note that by law, the Governor General is also enjoys the privilege of being exempted from income tax. For those colleagues in the chamber who may not know me too well or are not familiar with me, my current occupation is that of a teacher. And as the Honorable Senator and President of the Belize National Teachers Union, Madame Elena Smith, will tell you, teaching is a very arduous task. COVID-19 and home-based learning has made it even more difficult for us. The planning, the creation and physical compilation of packages, the assessment of those packages to provide for timely feedback to parents and students is work beyond imagination. After close to a decade in the teaching profession, my monthly income stands at a meager, well, it was a meager $2,070, of which 75 is Social Security. This 10% cut also deprives my household of another $207. I have no housing allowance. My housing, I must pay the Belize Bank $717 for, like many other people who have a mortgage. My personal transportation, I must pay $11 plus at the pump for regular gasoline. Telephone and internet is also an amenity that I must find the finance to pay for as well. I don't pay income tax as yet, since I have not surpassed the threshold of $26,000 per annum, but there are those who do. There are those who, despite taking a pay cut, remain above the threshold for taxes, and so it is a double hit on them. If you look around this country, honorable colleagues, you will note that many people are doing bad, getting along only by the grace of God. The little income earned by many was barely sufficient to make ends meet. This 10% cut threw many off the fiscal cliff into the unknown. Therefore, this sacrifice that we speak of must be embraced and applied across the board. Nobody should be above board. This proposed amendment to the Governor General's Service and Conditions Act seeks to increase the salary of the GG from $52,848 to $75,000. That's an increase of $22,152. It also seeks to increase the duty allowance from $2,400 monthly to $12,000 per annum. That's another increase of $9,600. If you do the maths, that is reflective of an overall increase of $31,752. The total earnings of the GG is now $87,000 per year, or $7,250 per month if you divide that amount by 12 months. Most Belizeans in the workforce do not earn $7,000 per month. I would go a step even further to tell you all that most Belizeans do not earn $7,000 per month in their lifetime. With all due respect to the Governor General, for a position that is largely ceremonial, such an increase at such a time is not the best idea. In a time when Belizeans across this country have had to take a pay cut, as well as others whose income has been completely cut off, this is an absolute slap in the face to them. I take this opportunity to also use senators as a perfect example of what it means to serve country. Every single bill that the Governor General signs into law passes through the Senate, where it is our collective duty to not just sign and stamp, but to debate and decide on the soundness of such legislation. This is by no means an easy task, as it entails research, it entails putting together full and proper presentations, and it also entails long hours of discussion and debate in these chambers. Yet, senators, with the exception of those who are ministers, I believe only receive a stipend of $900 per month, if I'm correct. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to look at a memo from the Accountant General Office in which countless open vote workers that were employed by the government are being told that they have absolutely nothing to collect from government in the form of gratuity or pension since they did not retire or since they did not resign or retire from service. But yet, there is a push for an amendment to increase the salary of the Governor General being prioritized. Not that it shouldn't be. Like many Belizeans, it is my expectation that anyone appointed to this post will do so with great humility and with service being their utmost priority, willing to serve for the love of people and the love of country. I note that our colleague, Senator Osmani Salas, made reference that, well, we wanted to do, he did a comparative analysis of what it is. GGs are being paid in the Commonwealth region, perhaps, or the Caribbean. And he pointed out some figures. However, our standard of living in Belize is different compared to Barbados, compared to Jamaica. There is, of course, a very high cost associated with goods and services there. I know colleagues who go out there to study law, to study economics, and they will tell you the price that you pay for basic things as fruits is out of this world. So, Madam President, I would like to state on record as well that if it is the government is strapped for cash, then the appointments, the contracts, and the programs should also reflect measures of austerity. With that, Madam President and esteemed colleagues, I close my presentation this morning. Thank you.
I recognize Senator Elena Smith.
Thank you, Madam President. Kindly permit me to, on behalf of the NTUCB, endorse the message of leader of government business in offering condolences to the family and the people of Haiti. And as well, Madam President, permit me to congratulate our colleagues being sworn in this morning to this honorable House. I now wish to make my comments on the motion and the bill before us, and I will not be very long either. I seldom am, but there are a few things that need to be brought to our attention, at least need to be mentioned today. And I want to start out by saying that our position as NTUCB has nothing to do with the person holding the office, or has nothing to do with us believing that the Governor General does not deserve to be paid, to be properly paid, properly compensated. As well, we also believe that as a group that represents workers, that our workers indeed should be given health coverage. That is very important for workers. Nonetheless, Madam President, we've heard my colleagues mentioned over and over, and we might be tired of hearing this, but it's the reality, that we've been hearing about the state of affairs of our country, that we cannot afford to keep persons with the same salary, that the government can't afford to do certain things, and that it's going to take us about 3 years before we get out of the mess that we are in. And so for our public officers and teachers who lost their salaries, we are being told that 3 years later, with a possibility of 1 year, depending on how that goes, that we may see a change in that cut in salary. However, Madam President, if it is that we are taking actions such as these, then I don't see how at the end of 1 year there's going to be any chance of that happening. And so, while, as I said, you should be compensated for the work that you do, at this point in time, what the current salary is, we believe at this point in time that the DG is able to live off of that. And that whatever increase is deserving after we would have done, job classification exercise, whatever it is that there needs to be done to ensure that the DG is properly compensated for the post that she holds and the work that she carries out or that she must carry out, because we are aware that there are several duties of the DG that are not all of them are carried out the way they ought to be carried out. As my colleague said, we mostly see the ceremonial aspect of the DG's position. But with all the benefits being given to the DG at this point in time, and considering the state of affairs of our country, we feel that the DG should be able to survive with the current salary. And as I said before, while we accept that we must be paid, we must be properly compensated for what we do, Madam President, this is not the time for that. And so when we hear the Prime Minister in his interviews equating respect with salary increase, then it makes you wonder, well, is it that we are not respected while we had a decrease? And I know they will say, of course not, that's not the reason why. It's because of the current situation. Well, if that is the reason, Madam President, then the current situation still stands. Nothing has changed. And so even the ministers had to give up of their salaries. And so this is right now, this is not a time for us to be telling our people that you must be punishing, you must be struggling to be able to meet the needs of your family, to pay your bills. But on the other hand, we are saying, with all of that is happening, with the fact that we cannot afford, Gigi, you deserve to get this increase at this time. As we look at the matter of the health insurance, Madam President, maybe a few clarifications are to be made. And I think my colleague spoke about it. It speaks to the GG and spouse and entitled child. I'm not sure what entitled child means in terms of what would be the normal definition when you apply for insurance. If that means something else, we may want to know that. But also, what kind of coverage is it that we're offering the GG? Is there a cap on that? Is this going to be for the 7-year period that is being proposed, or is this going to be that the GG will be covered until his or her death? The cost implications of that on the government. And I want to reiterate, Madam President, just in the event that persons didn't hear, that I said previously that we firmly believe that health insurance should be provided. It's something that employees should be given. But we want to reiterate that at this time, such an increase is not affordable. The government cannot afford it based on what they have told us, based on what they have shown us in their numbers, that there's no way that we can afford any of this at this time. And so the NTUCB then, on that premise, on that basis, cannot at this time support the motion and the bill before us. We, however, Madam President, believe that this matter could be tabled at another time when we would be able to support, because we would know then that the government would be in a better position to be able to afford such an increase that we have before us today. Thank you, Madam President.
Good morning, Madam President, colleagues. The Leader of Government Business has already done on our behalf the condolence of the Haitian people. I'd just like to extend that to the Haitians that are actually in Belize right now. Our hearty condolences to them. I ask that they continue to send up prayers for their relatives back home, and that they will seek to ask for good, solid leadership in their country so that they can benefit as a people, right? Welcome, senators. I smile quite cheerfully because there's a familiar face here. Welcome back, Senator Darrell Bradley. You have been very stalwart in your work for the country, and welcome back to the chambers. I'd also like to take, with your permission, Madam President, congratulations for Belizean athletes that are competing not just locally but internationally. They have been doing quite a lot for us as a country, and you know, once there's athletes competing anywhere, it means that Belize is getting limelights that we need, and of course that impacts our tourism. I've heard the comments, and they're very valid, and I appreciate what has been shared at different levels. But my perspective right now is that we're just looking at one office. It's not like we are considering an increase of the House of Representatives in terms of salary, in terms of a pension package or a health insurance package. We're looking at one specific office right now that is at the helm of our country, that represents the Queen or the head of state in this regard. I hear the words that says long overdue, Senator Salas, and it's very much so, and I'm sure it's the sentiments of many other senators here, along with the other concerns that they have. But again, if it was a wide array of a number of offices that were being increased, I would think then maybe I would have reservations in having to support a bill as this. But as I stand here right now, given the forging that we are putting in this country in terms of governance, in terms of women being in a leadership position, I fully support this bill, and I ask that we consider the work that we don't see behind the scenes. Senator Elena Smith made mention of the ceremonial things that we often see with the Governor General. But having spoken to a number of persons in the Caribbean over the past week, one person in particular, the Speaker Emeritus Boyd from Dominica, as we shared in our conversation, as I tried to understand a lot of what was happening in the Caribbean, her having to travel to different Caribbean countries and having to serve in Haiti, St. Lucia, and now in Dominica, as a retired parliamentarian, her sentiment was that, you know, it is an honor to serve, but the payment has never been, and senators can say that too. I think it was reiterated by Senator Mackenzie, the work that we put in the office has never been fully compensated. If I remember correctly, too, we have 2 ministers here serving. And again, apparently they're not being compensated for the work that they put in as senators. And of course, additionally, they have their other ministerial work to do. So as with the conversation that I've been having, the effort has to be calculated at some point. It cannot just be, we just look at the ceremonial things that happen, but the deep depth of research that needs and has to be put in for an office like this. It should be compensated, and I'm very, very particularly happy that we have a help package for the Governor General. It is important that we start to solidify. If we set the example here with the Governor General Office, of course it can continue to extend to all other public officers as we continue to stabilize the economy of this country. By doing so, once we solidify the administrative part of the country, then of course our public officers and by extension the country will benefit. So I stand to support this bill in totality.
Madam President, first of all, I want to associate myself with what Senator Bennett just said, that I believe that all senators who have spoke sincerely and genuinely and raised their concerns, and perhaps it's the only time where we won't have a little politics at play. So I think that's important because the Governor General should be above the political fray. Just 2 quick clarifications. The first is to Senator Smith. The entitled child is defined in the Governor General's Act as children under 18. It's a part of the legislation already. Secondly, the question, why the 7 years? There is no magic to it, and the intention was simple, to try to avoid the political cycle, the election cycle. This new Governor General would have been very early in the term of the current government. If you put 5 years, then it would be close to the politics. And so we just chose, what we were seeking to do was to ensure that we don't have a repetition of somebody serving for these 20 years and over 20 years, and to have just a 7-year period of a single term. And we came up with 7 to break the election cycle. So that's the explanation. There's no magic to it. If I understood colleagues, and I'm sure I will be corrected, the essential argument is that the timing of this bill and this motion is bad. In terms of the merits, we may have some issues here and there, but fundamentally, people appreciate and understand what the government is doing. And I want to, without going into much detail, say to colleagues, say to this Honorable Senate, that perhaps if you missed it, you should go back and look at an interview given by one of Sir Colville's sons, in which he, without going into detail, simply said the family believes that now is the right time for Sir Colville to retire. I say that to mean that the government was confronted with an issue, and we had to take a decision to advise Her Majesty that it was time for a new Governor General. This debate should not, in my respectful view, be held without reference to certain realities. And I ask senators to reflect on Dame Minita Gordon. Reflect on the treatment meted out to Dame Minita. Reflect on Dame Minita post her service to this country. She was getting what the bill currently provides. And the fact is, she could not live with what I believe, and I believe most Belizeans live with a level of dignity having regard to the office that she held. We have certain realities that we have to deal with. And one is the current financial position of the government. Senator Salas did his research, and we did the research as well, and the numbers are basically the same as he found them. In fact, if he had gone further, or at least disclosed further, you will see that other Caribbean countries are paying their governors general more than Belize. We are the lowest. I don't use that as a justification for the 75. I simply say that is where we are. That is a fact. When you bring it home to Belize, the salary without allowances of the Prime Minister is $91,000. The salary of the Chief Justice without allowances is $150,000. The salary of the Governor General without allowances is $52,000. So even when you take it to the 75, the Governor General will still be below the Chief Justice and below the Prime Minister. And that is a reflection of the government's concern for the financial position that we are in. I say to colleagues, what this bill seeks to do, and the motion, is to right a wrong, to correct an injustice. No Governor General, and I do not wish to talk out of turn and out of place. I will simply put it this way, and it has nothing to do with politics because it predated this current government. The government has had to pick up expenses of governors general, not provided for in law, in ex gratia payments, because the salary and the allowance is insufficient. We have pitched it at $75,000, making it the lowest in terms of the Chief Justice and the Prime Minister. And we can debate, should it be 70, should it be 50, should it be 45? We can always debate that. I believe if we were not in a period of austerity, no one would complain, and everyone repeated that the timing is bad. We accept that. But there is a reality, senators. Each person today or at a prior Senate meeting extolled the virtues of the current Governor General. That Governor General was approached by the government on the basis of a package. And I say it will be wrong for this Senate, the House, duly elected by the people, having debated and passed this bill and this motion, it will be wrong for the Senate to put the government in an embarrassing situation where the Senate, appointed, not elected, chooses to say, we will not pay the Governor General that which has been agreed between the Governor General and the government, simply because the timing is bad. Let me be absolutely clear. Let me be absolutely clear. The timing of this is by force of circumstance, where one Governor General decided to retire and we had to appoint a new Governor General, and the government believes, having regard to the realities that we are facing, that we cannot give the Governor General a salary equivalent to the Chief Justice, equivalent to the Prime Minister, or even equivalent to what the highest Governors General in the Caribbean get. Senator Bennett made the point. It is one person, one salary, one set of allowances. And nobody, I believe, would say that this is the best of times. It is absolutely not. But we are where we are. The final point I would wish to respond to is the question of the pension. Well, I should also respond to the question of the insurance. My understanding of the bill, and as I read it, I was discussing it with Senator Montejo, as I read it, it applies to the Governor General and his family in terms of the health insurance, and I would assume that if you are no longer the Governor General, then this section would not apply to you in terms of insurance. That's the way I read Section 4, Clause 14. With respect to the question of the pension, that is a point, Senator Bradley, which the government, as you know, will very shortly embark on the whole question of pension reform. And this office will be one that is included in the whole question of pension reform. Again, we'll come back to the Senate, but we will have to discuss the very difficult issue of whether we can continue to maintain a non-contributory pension scheme or whether people will have to start making contributions. So, Madam President, colleagues senators, the timing is bad, we agree. But I ask this Honorable Senate to, in good faith, and I do not allege, as I started, that anyone here on this particular debate is acting out of any political or other motive. I think people have said what they believe is right, but we are where we are. And I would ask the Senate to support with a heavy heart, bearing in mind the comments that have been made, and to say that the current Governor General is entitled to be compensated in terms of the motion and the bill. Madam President, I ask that the question be put.
Honorable members, that question is, now therefore be it resolved that this Honorable House amends the schedule to increase the salary of the Governor General to $75,000 per annum and the duty allowance to $12,000 per annum. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Governor General's Conditions of Service Act, Chapter 7 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for health insurance coverage for the Governor General and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, be read a second time. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
According with Standing Order 10.8, I move that the proceedings on the order paper be entered upon and proceeded with at this day's sitting at any hour though opposed.
Honorable members, the question is that the proceedings of the order paper may be entered upon and proceeded with at this day's sitting at any hour though opposed. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to amend the Governor General Conditions of Service Act, Chapter 7 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for health insurance coverage for the Governor General and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Bill for second reading.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, we dealt with the bill along with the Governor General resolution, so I will now move to the Finance and Audit Reform Amendment Bill. I move a second reading of a bill for an act to amend the Finance and Audit Reform Act, Chapter 15 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for the establishment of a contingencies fund to be used for urgent and unforeseen expenditure for which no other provision exists, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Madam President, the purpose of this bill is to put into law at the level of ordinary legislation, Section 117(1) of the Constitution. Section 117(1) of the Constitution says, any law enacted by the National Assembly may provide for the establishment of a contingencies fund and for authorizing the minister responsible for finance, if satisfied that there has arisen an urgent and unforeseen need for expenditure for which no other provision exists, to make advances from the fund to meet that need. Madam President, the Financial Secretary has told the senators that what has happened and has always happened is, one, no contingencies fund has ever been created by the government and funded as required by the Constitution. And therefore, when a hurricane hits, there's a flood, there's COVID or other unforeseen emergencies, the government has to go to existing budget lines and to withdraw monies from there and then bring a supplementary. What we seek to do is, in order to comply with the constitutional mandate, is to create the contingencies fund, which would then have a budget, a line in the budget. Therefore, when an emergency hits, which is unforeseen, there will be funds already appropriated by Parliament for that purpose, which can only be withdrawn by a warrant by the minister, and if the conditions set out in the schedule, the third schedule, are satisfied. It's important for the Senate to know that the monies can only be withdrawn if, one, such monies may be appropriated for. This purpose is for a public emergency under Section 18 of the Constitution, any other urgent and unforeseen expenditure, grants or loans to government for public emergencies, disaster management and relief, and other similar matters, and any other monies. Madam President, we are in the hurricane season. We have seen the effect of Hurricane Elsa already, and this fund is needed in order that we can have access to monies in the event we are hit by a storm or any hurricane.
I recognize Senator Darrell Bradley.
Madam President, I wish to offer a few comments on this bill. And I did a great degree of review in relation to the existing legislation. And I take the Honorable Foreign Minister's point that it is provided for in the Constitution, Section 117. So the Constitution mandates and requires a contingencies fund. I do also take the Foreign Minister's point that prudence would dictate that any reasonable government plan for emergencies. We have all known that as a result of COVID. The concerns that I would have is just to point out that under the existing Finance and Audit Reforms Act, Section 5, there is provision for the making of a special warrant in the event of emergencies. It's actually very similar to the draft legislation. So the comment that I would make is that existing legislation in terms of the Finance and Audit Act provides for the Section 5, provides for what is contemplated by this piece of legislation. And what I would say there is just to hearken on the point, and I know that it is in the Constitution. It is Section 117 of the Constitution that provides for a contingencies fund. I would only say that my thinking would be that the Constitution itself sets up a consolidated revenue fund for a particular reason. It sets up the consolidated fund as a fundamental check and balance on government expenditure. That's actually dealt with by a separate part of the Constitution all on its own. The Constitution also provides for other funds to be created. For example, there's reference to a development fund. But going back to first principles and the idea of accountability and transparency, the thinking is that all government expenditure should come through the consolidated fund. and should be properly budgeted for and allocated for whenever there are appropriations bills. So the idea in principle of another fund, even a contingencies fund, would be, in my view, anathema to the principle of accountability and transparency. There is a consolidated revenue fund, and there's a reason why the Constitution sets up that fund. And I would say that the existing Finance and Audit Reform Act, Section 5, provides for special warrants that are drawn down from that consolidated revenue fund, so that there is provision in existing law to deal with emergencies. There is provision to deal with COVID. There is provision to deal with hurricanes. And it does not do injury to the status of the consolidated revenue fund. The other point that I wanted to add on this is that Section 5 of the Finance and Audit Reform Act makes provisions for emergencies and provides for limitations in relation to the drawdowns or advances. So there's a reference in there to a $500,000, and there's a reference to a 10% of the budget item. So the comment that I would make here is that in principle, I don't have a difficulty with a contingencies fund. It's mentioned in the Constitution, and prudence dictates that we plan. However, I would only say that the checks and balances require certain things. One thing that I would want to see is the this contingency fund has certain benchmarks, like the existing Finance and Audit Reform Act, that there's a limit. So what we're talking about in this contingencies fund is an unlimited amount of money. And you're setting this up as a parallel to the Consolidated Revenues Fund. I do not doubt the government's sincerity in relation to setting this fund up and the need for planning. But spending that is not controlled by the checks and balances of the Consolidated Revenue Fund, in my view, with respect to the government, would be somewhat dangerous. There are no existing limitations in this bill that would address the concerns that are addressed when a person spends from the Consolidated Revenue Fund, including when they spend from the emergency provisions under Section 5 of the Finance and Audit Reform Act. When you make a special warrant for emergencies, there are benchmarks in there. It cannot be over 500,000 or 10% of that line item in the budget. This proposed amendment has no such limitations. So the idea there is that we could have a contingency fund that parallels the budget. The contingency fund could be $1 billion. The contingency fund could be so much more. The other thing that I would just offer as a comment in relation to this contingency fund is that the amendments, I know that there is, and I would stand to be corrected on this because I'm not clear in terms of the existing draft. But the Finance and Audit Reform Act has clear provisions in terms of timelines. If you are spending money out of the Consolidated Revenue Fund or any other fund that's created, there are certain timelines that you have to come back to the House of Representatives for approval. You would get the approval in advance, but if you do not get the approval in advance, there is a 3-month time limit, 90 days. But I stand to be corrected in relation to that. I see my honorable friend, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, smiling in relation to that, and we can't retreat from that. But we would only say that government should aspire to do better. And my concern in relation to the timelines, likewise, is that we would want to, it expressly stated that there are certain time periods. If you are going to spend from this this contingencies fund, and you will make a spending by way of a warrant of the minister without the prior approval of the National Assembly, it should be stated quite clearly in there that you have 90 days to come back to the National Assembly to have that approved or ratified or what have you. So my issue is not necessarily with the bill itself. I agree with the rationale of the bill. It is in the Constitution. However, our concern would be the unlimited nature of it, we would prefer that there be language similar to Section 5 of the Finance and Audit Reform Act that sets certain benchmarks. An emergency like COVID or an emergency like a hurricane would not cost $1 billion. There would be certain benchmarks that could be in there, and in any emergency, you should not trump the legislative power to approve legislation. I'm not saying that the bill does this, but there is always the opportunity to spend money, but then convene a meeting of the National Assembly very shortly thereafter, definitely within a 90-day period. So those would be my comments in relation to the bill.
I recognize Senator Kevin Herrera.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, on principle, like the previous speaker, I don't have an issue with the bill, but there are some concerns that I have that I'd like to raise and that perhaps would be needed for me to support the bill. The contingency fund, Madam President, is actually provided for under the Constitution, like what was mentioned before, under Section 117(1), and so it's provided for. It's proper, and so there's not an issue there. And it also provides that it's for unforeseen expenses, and that and it further subscribes that a supplementary should be presented as soon as possible to replenish the funds. Coming from the business sector, Madam President, what we're trying to accomplish here reminds me to a certain degree of what we call the petty cash. In business, we would have a small fund, and this is for unforeseen expenditures. I notice here in this bill it also talks about urgent and unforeseen expenditures and small things. But the point I want to make with respect to the petty cash is, one, is it's specific. It's a specific amount. When that fund is depleted, you have to get all these receipts and bring them to finance for that to be replenished. So you really have to give account of every penny you spent in that fund in order to have it replenished. If we look at Section 2A2 and C of the bill, Madam President, and perhaps I'll also read one. The purpose of a public emergency, and these are purposes for which the amounts can be used. The purpose of a public emergency under Section 18 of the Belize Constitution, and to any other urgent and unforeseen expenditures. I don't know what that means, Madam President. To me, it's an opening for under budgeting under the Consolidated Revenue Fund. An urgent and unforeseen expenditure that could be, and I'll use an example here. A CO vehicle in an accident, maybe it wasn't budgeted to be replaced in that fiscal year, and so it's brought under this. You know, when I looked at the bill the first time, what came to mind was hurricanes, COVID, you know, those types of unforeseen expenditures. But then again, you know, I can see the type of loopholes where it can be abused in the sense that I don't have to go through the process to access money through the Consolidated Revenue Fund. I don't have to pay a whole lot of attention to my budgeting. So if I'm looking at overrun my budget, then I just go to the contingency fund. The other point I wanted to make is at point C, any other monies. Again, it goes back to the point I was making under point 2. You know, I'm not entirely clear in terms of what that means. And I see that there can be an avenue there where other things other than what we're intending for the fund to be used for can creep in. And again, I'm not at all suggesting that this is the intention of the current administration, but I can see down the road that this type of thing can happen, and we can be having these debates again where we're talking about accountability, we're talking about transparency, we're screaming everything under the sun in terms of, misuse of funds, using the fund for what it wasn't intended to. In the spirit of transparency and accountability, Madam President, I would think that, we would want to address those issues. Make sure that, one, there's a limit, like what Senator Bradley just mentioned. Is it 10% of the consolidated revenue fund? Is it 5%? And there should also be a timeline, a specific timeline, in terms of when it is brought back to the House. I would like to suggest no longer than 1 month after these expenditures are made. And when that comes back, let's have a detailed breakdown of how the funds were used. I don't see that type of provision in the bill, and I think I'm hoping that it's an oversight, but I'm also hoping that it's something that we can correct to make it a little tighter, so that we don't have to have all these back and forths going into the future, where we're accusing one administration or the other of misusing the funds, using it for unintended purposes. And so I think, again, Madam President, just to sum up what I mentioned, in the spirit of openness, in the spirit of good governance, let's try to address the issues that I had raised. Those are the only issues I have, and if we can address those issues, I can support the bill.
I recognize Senator Osmani Salas.
Thank you, Madam President. I start by saying that I associate myself with what my colleagues before me have said, Senator Bradley and Senator Herrera. This bill, as currently structured, in my opinion, Madam President, should go back to the drawing board for the same reasons that have been expressed, and I won't repeat them. But maybe I should, for emphasis. The fact that there is no limitation, as my colleague before me mentioned, there's no limit stated. In principle, I also support the need for a contingencies fund. In the UK, they have had a contingencies fund from 1862. So, and it's set out in our constitution. But there needs to be a limit. If I go back to the example from the UK, it had been 2%. 2% of the amount of the government budget in the preceding year. Because of COVID, they did an amendment and increased it to 50%, but time-bound to the end of the current fiscal year. So that is a limit. Now, without a limit, we conceivably can have a situation with two funds operating side by side. Again, I must emphasize the point that does not bode well for transparency and accountability. Now, what does all that mean if this bill passes as it is? My understanding is, and I stand to be corrected, is that Parliament would in effect be forced to approve actions after they have happened. I think in legal parlance, ex post facto is the term. The government's use of the fund, whether or not it goes back to the drawing board, but it needs to be carefully scrutinized. And this is a job now, if I can say that, colleagues, for the Joint Public Accounts Committee. I see a specific role for the JPAC to carefully scrutinize the expenditure, the use of this and other funds, of course, but we're speaking about the contingencies fund. And it should also be stated that when Parliament votes to approve the urgent expenditure, the monies are to be repaid back into the contingencies fund. So I would like to see a limit set, which is not at this stage. So it's open, it's really open-ended. So I had asked for explanatory notes laying out the justification for the bill as it currently stands. I did not receive it. Could be there was not time to prepare it, but we would all have benefited from that to try to understand government's argument for why the bill is needed as it is set out now. But the type of information I think we all need to have, whether or not the contingencies fund is set up, is how and when the fund is used, specifics about that, the categories of advance, how departments go about applying for an advance, notifying Parliament, the whole procedure for repayment of advances, accounts of the fund, and accounting for advances from the fund in departmental accounts. So all this information is needed. So, Madam President, I end by emphasizing the point, by reiterating that I would feel much more confident to support the need for a contingencies fund once these limits are set and some of our questions are responded and clarified. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Ashton Mackenzie.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Esteemed colleagues, I rise to make my contributions this morning with regards to the proposed amendment to the Finance and Audit Reform Act. We're looking here at the establishment of a contingency fund. And I understand perfectly that it is important in life to prepare adequately for unforeseen circumstances. That is critically important. We don't know what life will throw at us. You will note that COVID-19 remains one of the most hemorrhagic emergencies in the history of Belize. And as such, we must be prepared moving forward in order to be able to adequately respond to unforeseen circumstances. I have, and I will state openly, that I have several issues with this proposed amendment. The first issue is that has been mentioned by my colleagues that presented prior to me. There is absolutely no ceiling. One of the basic and most important principles of sound budgetary practice is that of the establishment of ceilings or limits. This bill offers no ceiling as it relates to emergency spending. We don't know if we're talking about 10 million, 15 million, 100 million, or even $1 billion. And that is certainly room or cause for concern amongst all of us in this honorable chamber this morning as we debate this matter. The reporting time frame, I also have an issue with that. We're talking about public monies, and as such, we know that the message being echoed by the social partners, by different organizations and Belizeans on a whole, is that of transparency and accountability. And we must not shy away from that. That should remain something that we continue to demand from not only this government, but any government. Madam President, you will note, for those of you who watch the news, several ministers of government have made mention that last year there was a lot of reckless spending in the name of COVID, and that we spent 500 million plus of monies that we didn't have, and all that sort of thing. But here we are with a proposed amendment that basically looks to give the government, the Minister of Finance in particular, the authority to spend any amount in the name of emergency. In perusing the document, section, I believe it's here for the amendment, 10A2, and then it goes to 10A2, point number 2. It highlights there, and any other urgent and unforeseen expenditure. It's quite concerning as to what may be deemed as urgent and what may be deemed as unforeseen. We have seen this administration, since taking office, deem a lot of things as being urgent that the Belizean people don't share that similar view, that the social partners don't share that similar view, that those things are in fact urgent. Madam President, one of the points that always looms amid discussion is that of ministerial discretion. And under this proposed amendment, much discretion is given to the Honorable Minister of Finance. Also, I would like to point out that another issue I have with this bill is that of separate accounts being established. It begs me to ask the question, what is this government trying to avoid with this bill? We have a consolidated revenue fund. We know that monies, be it from loans, grants, etc., are all housed under that umbrella, or if we want to be specific, the Consolidated Revenue Fund. Why is it now that we are looking to have separate accounts to house monies? There's also a part of this proposed amendment that states that this fund will also be inclusive of grants or loans to government for public emergencies, disaster management, and relief, and other similar matters, or any other matters. That is also a concern. I know that the government of Taiwan has pledged to be quite generous in providing, I believe, $80 million in budgetary support to this government. I have concerns about that as well. Will such monies be placed in this contingency fund, as opposed to this contingency fund? I also have the question as to why is it that, as opposed to establishing a special contingency fund, that NEMO, you have other key ministries that could have used perhaps some sort of additional budgetary support, especially those that have to respond to emergencies, hurricanes, etc. We know that the Ministry of Infrastructure, for example, had to respond to the urgent repairs of roads around the country. I also call to mind the fact that the former leader of the opposition, now Prime Minister, the Honorable John Briceño, along with other claimants, took the Honorable Dean Barrow to court with regards to monies that were spent. And here we have here, in this particular piece of legislation, it will allow for warrants, which I believe the previous or the former Prime Minister utilized. So for me, this bill is very hypocritical. And for the reasons that I have cited, as well as reasons cited by other colleagues, under no circumstance can I support this bill. Thank you.
I recognize Senator Elena Smith.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a few comments from the NTUCB on this matter. I, first of all, want to say that I associate myself with the comments of my two colleagues, Senator Salas and Senator Herrera, because we too have a concern as it relates to the limit of the fund that is not indicated, or limit or ceiling, however we want to call it. But we also have issues in terms of a concern in terms of the accountability of this fund. Well, you know, whether we have seen where, since we have been here as senators, that we've had such a bill come before us for contingency fund under the previous administration, and our concern has always been similar, the limit and to accountability, because is it that this fund is going to be audited? You know, how are we going to be assured that the purposes, as it says, urgent and unforeseen expenditure, how are we assured that that is going to be, it's going to be used for that purpose? But in terms of the accountability, Madam President, that is very key for us, and we ought to ensure that that is a part of what we do, especially in dealing with finances. We know that, you know, whenever there's room for interpretation of these matters, mischief is deemed to happen, and so we don't want that persons are able to do mischief because the bill is not clear or people have their own interpretation of what unforeseen or urgent might mean. So those are our concerns that we have there at the NTUCB, and we trust that those concerns would be answered before we are able to proceed with our voting on the bill. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Shari Medina.
Yes, good afternoon. So similarly to what other senators have shared, my concern about this bill is something that, for me, and I believe for everybody right now, it's about check and balance. We don't have proper check and balance, then it kind of builds that fear in you to see exactly how we'll be able to deal with a fund that has no limit. So, for clarity, we would need to know exactly what's the limit of this money we're talking about here. Is there going to be a limit? And then, of course, we keep stressing about the fact of accountability, transparency. The people of this country deserve that, if nothing else, when it comes to funds being spent. So, I also looked at the fact that there's a contingency fund, and then it seems like it's parallel, like there are two parallel accounts. So it would require then for us to really specify exactly what accounts we're talking about here and the funds involved, because to me it seems parallel, like there's a contingency, then there's a slush fund. So there needs to be more clarity. But for the record, I want to emphasize and state that this bill will require much more thought, much more specific information that we can readily accept. And once there is proper check and balance, and there is a limit to this fund, then we can rightly say that we're probably on the right path. But again, will there be audits, proper audits being done? How will we be able to determine all this? So it's just a matter of proper check and balances, having a limit to be able to see that we're dealing with a certain amount of money, and being able to, like I said, our people of this country demand proper accountability and transparency. So I stand for that as well. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Chris Cowie.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have a couple comments to make concerning this bill and the concerns raised so far. Perhaps I may have misunderstood some of the concerns raised, but in respect of the Constitution on Section 117, it doesn't provide contingencies fund. It provides that any law enacted by the National Assembly may provide for the establishment of a contingencies fund. So this is what this bill actually proposes to do, to follow through with what Section 117.1 provides, so that a contingencies fund is in fact established. The same Section 117.1 also speaks to the purpose of the fund, and that there has arisen an urgent and unforeseen need for expenditure. So again, following through with what the section of the Constitution provides, the bill seeks to make for the use of the proceeds or funds within the contingency fund to be applied to urgent and unforeseen expenditures as explicitly stated in the Constitution. So I think for clarification purposes, there is nothing more than what is already stated and provided for in the Constitution is what this bill is seeking to accomplish. In terms of the practical side of things, and I appreciate the comments made by Senator Herrera. Belize does have significant challenges, economic and fiscal, and as Senator Smith had alluded to earlier, the time involved in getting ourselves back on our feet. It is not something that can be done in 1 year. That said, this establishment of a fund represents an additional cost that makes that challenge even harder, but we have to appreciate the larger purpose. When we look at business, the private sector, Senator Herrera spoke about petty cash. And I think what we are trying to do here as this administration is to have prudent fiscal management. Prudent fiscal management means that we have to have proper financial management, proper cash management, and preparation for what may come, what is unforeseen. This is not a situation of petty cash. This is a situation of insurance, self-insurance. We don't know what will come. We have to look at planning for those contingencies, just like a business does. If you have a farm, you want to prepare for the possibility of a hurricane or a flood knocking you out. Many in agriculture feel the problems they face by the absence of hurricane insurance. This here is an effort to address the absence of insurance by developing our own insurance, self-insurance, through a contingencies fund. Now, Senator Herrera did speak about petty cash. Petty cash is small compared to what we're looking at as far as natural disasters that can come, or the COVID pandemic and its resultant costs. But when we start talking about limits, what we're talking about in trying to establish this contingencies fund, we're basically talking about petty cash, because we're starting from zero. When Senator Salas spoke about UK having 2%, why did they increase it to 50%? Well, obviously, the 2% was not enough. For COVID, that 2% was petty cash. What we need is adequate insurance. So we are way far away from being able to get ourselves in a proper position to insure ourselves against the unforeseen and urgent expenditure needs. So that's the broader perspective, that we have to start managing this fiscal budget, this consolidated revenue fund, in a prudent way. We have to manage our government and ultimately our economy in a prudent way. And so when we look at that, we have to take account of how do we address unforeseen disasters, unforeseen needs for expenditures. And just like a business, they do insurance for public liability, they do insurance for employee liability, any number of different insurances to protect and secure the business for the foreseeable future. Just the same, that is what we are looking to do here with establishing this bill, is to engage in prudent financial management for Belize and for the government. One point I would finally like to make with respect to the rules, and I think they're valid points in terms of starting to iron out or creating more detail in the use of the fund, the contingencies fund. The way that the bill is set up, it looks at, it provides a schedule for rules, and those rules explicitly state the restrictions on how the fund is to be utilized. It talks about the use of a warrant, but the warrant not being approved or not being utilized until approved by the House, save and except in those emergency circumstances, but that that is to be brought before the House at its next sitting. So it certainly addresses a process. The rules themselves may also be amended to provide for more particularity. That as well has to be approved by the House of Representatives, but there is a mechanism already set in place to the extent that more detail, more accountability, as has been put forward, is required. So there is already that mechanism in place. But the overarching objective at this point in time, and as Senator Courtney spoke to, this is an urgent matter. We are going into our hurricane season. We need to start looking at getting ourselves more prepared. So the establishment of a contingencies fund is now a matter of priority that we need to get in place. So with those comments, I express my support for this bill.
I recognize Leader of Government Business.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I had hoped that because of the passage of time, we would have taken some time to look at the bill, and I was hoping that the bill would have enjoyed the support of the Senate. Perhaps one of the problems is that I did not give a sufficient explanation of the financial context and the constitutional context in which this arises. I will seek to do so now. Madam President, let's start from the beginning. Section 114 of the Constitution, with which Senator Bradley is very familiar, states, all revenues or other monies raised or received by Belize, not being revenue or other monies payable under this Constitution or any other law, into some other public fund established for a specific purpose, shall be paid into and form one consolidated revenue fund. The section that establishes the consolidated revenue fund starts off on the premise that there are other public funds established for a purpose, and it is only the monies that are not paid into those public funds that go into the consolidated revenue fund. So the notion, as expressed by Senator Mackenzie, of concern about other funds is put entirely to bed by reading Section 114 of the Constitution. Section 117 of the Constitution is one such fund. It provides for the notion that there are contingencies which are unforeseen and urgent for which the government needs to make expenditure. And so it empowers the National Assembly to establish such a fund for that specific purpose, urgent and unforeseen expenditures. Madam President, it is absolutely important for us to appreciate that the purpose, the reason why this was brought to the Senate some months ago was because of debates that we had in here, critical of the very thing that Senator Mackenzie brought up. Over $1 billion spent without any legislative approval. That is why we said all those contingency funds that were spent on Hurricane Eta, Hurricane Iota, all the other hurricanes, COVID, etc., were not out of a contingency fund. They were grab and pull from all kind of accounts without any oversight. So, as the Constitution contemplates, you have a budget every year that estimates expenditure and revenue, and appropriations are made, and heads of account are set up, and monies are allocated to those heads and withdrawn from time to time. What the Constitution also contemplates, and what we are seeking to do, is to say, in addition to that, create another fund that deals only with urgent and unforeseen expenditures. The fundamental point I make, firstly, is that what is being done here is entirely, completely consistent with the constitutional framework designed under the Chapter 9 dealing with public finances. My second point is, and let me take the time to look at the Finance and Audit Reform Act. Madam President, the Finance and Audit Reform Act that is being amended creates Section 9, Special Fund, create Section 10, Development Fund. And all we are seeking to do is to make an amendment to create a contingency fund. So the point I make is, one, the Constitution contemplates this. Two, the Finance and Audit Reform Act itself creates the Consolidated Revenue Fund, the Development Fund, Special Fund, and now we're saying the Contingency Fund consistent with Section 117 of the Constitution. Again, the point I make is, this is not something that is unusual. This is not something that is strange. This is something that already exists in law. Funds other than the Consolidated Revenue Fund. What we have seen as a matter of practice is disobedience by governments with good governance, transparency, and accountability. And this bill seeks to increase and improve transparency and accountability. The second issue raised, Madam President, is the question of audit. And I'm again surprised that that is an issue that is going to be raised. The Finance and Audit Reform Act, Sections 11 to Section 16, provides for the Auditor General to make audit of public funds. This is not something that is going to be outside the remit of the Auditor General. And I don't know where that notion could conceivably creep in. Section 11 to Section 16 talks about the annual accounts, the audit certificates, fraud, powers of the Auditor General, duty of the Auditor General, power of auditors. So the same law already provides for audits. There is nothing strange. On top of that, we should all know that Section 120 of the Constitution is absolutely clear. There shall be an Auditor General whose office shall be a public office. The Auditor General shall, at least once in every year, audit and report on the public accounts of Belize. What are we afraid of? The Constitution provides for this. The Constitution contemplates different funds. The Finance and Audit Reform Act contemplates different funds. The Constitution provides for audit. The Finance and Audit Reform Act provides for audit. How could this conceivably not be consistent with transparency and accountability? Well, Madam President, let us take a closer look at the bill itself, because I was a bit concerned for myself listening to fellow senators expressing concern. Clause 10A, subclause 2C. The contingencies fund shall consist of the following monies: such money as may be appropriated for public emergency under Section 18, urgent and unforeseen expenditure, grants or loans to the government for public emergencies, and any other money. If there is a donation, Honorable Senator refers to Taiwan. From time to time, Taiwan donates money. International organizations donate money in times of emergencies. And what this is saying is that a donation would be any other money which goes into that fund. Why are we afraid of that? What's wrong with that? If Taiwan, Russia, Japan wants to donate $1 million to deal with an emergency, you put the donation into this fund. That's what the law contemplates. Somehow something is wrong with that. I want to focus, Madam President, on the rules. Again, because when one reads what is provided for, one can see that the concerns raised by senators are addressed. It says, no money shall be withdrawn from the contingencies fund for the purpose of meeting any expenditure except upon the authority of a warrant under the hand of the minister. Subject to the provisions of these rules, no such warrant shall be issued unless the expenditure has been authorized by the National Assembly in accordance with the provisions of these rules. Let's look at that. No money can come out of the fund except under a warrant. No such warrant shall be issued unless the expenditure has been authorized by the National Assembly. We were concerned in previous Senate meetings about money being spent without authorization. And so what this provision is saying very clearly is that the minister must issue a warrant and the expenditure cannot take place unless it has been authorized by the National Assembly. That, as I understand it, is prior approval. Let's go to clause 3. The minister shall cause to be prepared in each financial year estimates of the revenue and expenditure of the contingencies fund for the next following financial year. The proposals for all expenditure contained in the estimate shall be submitted to the National Assembly, together with a statement showing the estimated balance of the fund at the commencement of the current financial year and the anticipated revenue accruing to an anticipated expenditure from the fund during the current financial year. Madam President, the rules require the minister to present every year an estimate of the revenue and expenditure from this particular fund plus the balance carried over. So when you read 3 with 2, you will see what it is saying is that that has been reported to the House that has been approved, then the minister can issue the warrant. Prior approval before the warrant is issued. Except where an urgent and unforeseen need for expenditure has arisen. Now, a legitimate question has been raised. And again, I guess I should blame myself for assuming that because so much time had passed, that people would have done their research, but I would have brought it. Senator Bradley, experienced and competent counsel, Good boy. He soon get his senior counsel. You are one, in my view, but I don't have the power. But this phrase, urgent and unforeseen need for expenditure, has been judicially determined in the Commonwealth, in cases from Australia and in the Caribbean. And it says what it means, and it means what it says. Unforeseen, you never see it, and urgent. And cannot, without serious injury to the public interest, be postponed until adequate provision can be made by the National Assembly. So what is it saying? Something that was not contemplated, something that is urgent, and that will damage the public interest if it is not addressed. The minister issues a warrant only because it cannot be made without adequate provision by the National Assembly. Then he may issue that. It goes on in the next provision. The warrant so issued shall be reported to the House of Representatives at its next meeting. At the next meeting, the House of Representatives shall call for consideration of supplementary, shall be submitted for the approval of the National Assembly. Madam President, it is my respectful submission to this Honorable Senate that one, the contingencies fund created by this bill is contemplated and consistent with the Constitution of this country, and also contemplated by and consistent with the Consolidated Revenue Fund. Secondly, the Finance and Audit Reform Act itself makes copious provision for auditing of public accounts, which would include the contingencies fund. The Constitution of this country provides the power to the Auditor General and mandates he or her to audit all public accounts, including the contingencies fund. There can be absolutely no doubt that this fund, if established, and I hope it will be established, will be audited by the Auditor General, and everybody in here knows that those audit reports are required to be brought to the National Assembly. Madam President, members of the Senate, the rules, when read fairly, provide one, for estimates to be presented of expenditure and revenue for the fund to be approved by the National Assembly, and only in urgent and unforeseen circumstances which arise, which if you have to wait for a House meeting, there will be injury to the public interest, can the minister issue a special warrant to have monies expended without prior approval, and he is required to report at the next sitting of the House of Representatives. Madam President, if there is one lacuna legitimately raised, I believe, by most of the senators, is a question of the limit of the expenditure. And I am prepared, I have indicated to Senator Bradley, to move an amendment in committee to add that, so we send it back to the House with the limit in terms of expenditure by the minister without prior parliamentary approval. So if that enjoys the confidence and support of the Senate, I will make that amendment in the committee of the Senate, in line with the language used in the Finance and Audit Reform Act for the Consolidated Revenue Fund. I wrap up by saying this, Madam President. This Finance and Audit Reform Act has in it sufficient provisions that ensure transparency in the expenditure of public funds in emergencies and for contingencies. And there is sufficient provision in there for auditing and reporting to the National Assembly. And I ask for the support of the Senate, and I ask that the question be put.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Finance and Audit Reform Act, Chapter 15 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for the establishment of a contingency fund to be used for urgent and unforeseen expenditure for which no other provision exists, and to provide for matters connecting therewith or incidental thereto, be read a second time. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
The bill for an act to amend the Finance and Audit Reform Act, Chapter 15 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for the establishment of a contingency fund to be used for urgent and unforeseen expenditure for which no other provision exists, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Committee of the Whole Senate on Bills.
Can members of the gallery please vacate?
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
President, I rise to report that the Committee of the Whole Senate has considered the Finance and Audit Reform Amendment Bill 2021 and passed it with amendment. I now move that the bill be read a third time.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Finance and Audit Reform Act, Chapter 15 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for the establishment of a contingencies fund to be used for urgent and unforeseen expenditure for which no other provision exists, and to provide for matters connecting therewith or incidental thereto, be read a third time. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
The bill for an act to amend the Finance and Audit Reform Act, Chapter 15 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition, to provide for the establishment of a contingency fund to be used for urgent and unforeseen expenditure for which no other provision exists, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I rise to report that the Committee of the Whole Senate has considered the Governor General Conditions of Service Amendment Bill 2021 and passed it without amendment. I now move that the bill be read a third time.
The question is that the bill for an act to amend the Governor General Conditions of Service Act, Chapter 7 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for health insurance coverage for the Governor General and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, be read a third time. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to amend the Governor General Condition of Service Act, Chapter 7 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for health insurance coverage for the Governor General and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn.
Honorable members, before I put the question, I recognize Senator Bevington Call, who will speak in accordance with Standing Order 11 on an issue of public importance.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for giving me this opportunity. And first, I would also like to join the government in extending my sympathies to the people and government of Haiti for the most difficult time that they're presently experiencing, and I hope a sense of calm and justice will prevail. And I would also like to congratulate the new senators. So welcome. We look forward to some healthy debates and of course some positive feedback on how we will move our country forward. Madam President, the issue of urgent public importance that I would like to speak on is vaccination. But first, I would like to empathize with our brothers and sisters in the 3 villages of Barranco, Midway, and Coneja who are currently on lockdown. I want to ask them to be patient with the government and the authorities, the ministry. We know it's really hard to be on lockdown, but we're all in this together. And we all need to do our part to fight this pandemic. I also want to thank the ministry and our government who is providing food packages for them every 4 days. I think this is, something that is helping them, as they go through these difficult times as well. Madam President, for the past few days and weeks, we have seen an increase in the COVID-19 infections in our country, and now we are aware of a variant that is detected in our country. This is really alarming to us, and we must all do our part to contain this virus. Just a few days ago, the Ministry of Health launched its Before You Relax, what is it? Just one sec. Yeah, Before You Relax, Get vaccination campaign. I think they did a marvelous job in doing this, and we want to applaud them for that. The ministry and government is doing its part, and we're asking all Belizeans to do their part, Madam President, because we're all in this together. Our heroes, the frontline workers, the med labs, doctors, nurses, are all doing their part. And so it is just fair for all Belizeans to do their part by getting vaccinated. This variant is real and it is deadly. And I quote an interview that Dr. William Schaffner, a professor of the Division of Indigenous Diseases at Vanderbilt University Medical Center said. He said, Madam President, that unvaccinated people are potential variant factories. Unvaccinated people not only risk their own health, but also risk the health of everyone around them. The more unvaccinated people there are, the more opportunity for the virus to multiply. Madam President, coming from the south in the Toledo district, we realize that a lot of our people are not getting vaccinated. And this is of great concern to me, because we have a lot of vulnerable people in our community. The villages are really far apart to access health care. So I want to take this time to encourage my brothers and sisters of the South and in extension the whole country that we must get vaccinated. The vaccine is safe. I got vaccinated, my family got vaccinated, so we all need to get vaccinated. Our Ministry of Health is reaching to every community, and the alcaldes and village policemen of every community in the Toledo district will inform the villagers of when the ministry will go into their communities. So I also want to thank and applaud the leaders of these communities who are doing their best to reach out to the communities to tell them the schedule, of these clinics. Again, I want to reiterate and stress that we all need to do our part, and that part that we need to do is to get out and get vaccinated. Like our Prime Minister said, that vaccination means jobs for Belizeans. Vaccination means opportunities for Belizeans. And jobs means a rebound, vaccination means a rebound for economy, and this will bring a better Belize, for all of us if we get vaccination. We are blessed that we have a lot of friendly countries who are, donating vaccine to us, and we thank them for that. So I urge all Belizeans to let us make use of these vaccines before it's too late, Madam President. I want to close by reminding everyone, let us social distance, let us wash our hands, let us wear a mask properly, and more importantly, let us get vaccinated. Madam President, once again, thank you.
Honorable members, the question is that the Senate do now adjourn. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. The Senate stands adjourned.